Welcome to the Devstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and Alpenwolf Games. Something you haven't heard me say before, but it's actually something that I've been doing longer than Castalia House, Arcade and Comics, Infogalactic, some of the other stuff that you're used to me introducing. So this is a dev stream as opposed to a dark stream, and it's something that a number of you had requested. So I'll be interested to see how many people are actually genuinely interested in talking about game design, game development, and that sort of thing. Now we'll mix it up. We tried the wine stream. That really didn't pique too much interest, which is probably just as well. But we'll see what sort of interest we have in the dev stream. So anyhow, so the topic for tonight is Fortnite and why Fortnite represents a surrender by first-person shooter developers. Now, what you may not realize is that I've been involved in game design since about 1988. I started as an amateur, and the game that I wanted to design at the time was actually the original version of this, the original Warlords. This is the manual from Warlords 2, which is still a great game, by the way. I think you can find it pretty easily on the abandonware sites. I don't think Good Old Games carries it, but it was a great game for its time. So we'd come up with some ideas. We were working on that. We never actually finished it because we ended up getting excited by what the folks at id had done in coming up with 2.5D shooters, the first FPS. And so once we graduated from college and were off doing our own thing, we began working on a game that eventually came to be known as Rebel Moon, which, if you've ever heard of the Creative Labs 3D Blaster, then you might be familiar with Rebel Moon. You might have heard of it. What was interesting about that was that I actually trademarked the term 3D Blaster long before Creative had even thought about it. I was involved in designing a chip called the 3GA. It was a failure, but it was 18 months ahead of NVIDIA. If it hadn't been for some bad luck, we would have been NVIDIA. But this is probably the game that the game design I was most known for, Rebel Moon Rising. It was never very popular in the States or in the West, but it was actually quite popular in Eastern Europe. And it was even notable for one trivial reason, which is that it was the first FPS to include serious missions, escort missions. And that's not according to me, by the way. That's according to Computer Gaming World. So if you haven't taken exception to that, take it up with them. Anyhow, one of the mistakes that we made when we were working on Rebel Moon Revolution, which was the third in the series, the follow-on to Rebel Moon Rising, and we made several mistakes. We should have used the Unreal Engine, which was offered to us at the time. We probably should have not gone so hardcore on the artificial intelligence and relying on it so heavily as part of the design. But that was an important choice, because at that time everybody was trying to figure out how to most effectively provide meaning to the action. How do you connect a story? how do you connect purpose to running around shooting people? And obviously over time there have been a lot of different ways to explore that, but the approach that won out, and it was one that we considered, but we rejected it because we didn't like the limiting factor of it. But it turned out to definitely be the right way to go and the way that we should have gone. And that was to just put everything on a rail. Half-Life was essentially a guided tour of the map, and other games followed that way. That's why when we talk about a game, an FPS, and we talk about there being a right way to go and a wrong way to go. In Gamergate there was a saying that if you're heading towards the monsters and people are shooting at you, you're going the right way. Well, that's a consequence of attaching the story to the path. And now I'm not criticizing that. That was the right thing to do. That was the way that the entire industry ended up moving. But it wasn't the only possibility. And the way that we pursued, which ended up not working out because GT Interactive went under before we had the chance to finish the game. But the approach that we were taking with both Rebel Moon Revolution and with Traveler, which we were working on with Julian LaFay of Arena fame, that very popular series is essentially an extension of his games that he created originally. But our idea was that you were going to be interacting with artificial intelligence. So you had your squad, which could be AI soldiers, which could be enemy soldiers, NPCs, etc. We really went overboard because we were bringing in synthetic speech, we were bringing in speech recognition, so there's a surprisingly sophisticated interaction with the artificial intelligences. We actually wanted to try to make it so that you couldn't tell if you were interacting with a human or an artificial intelligence. So kind of like what you see with the bots these days, but even more sophisticated. And remember, this is back in 1996, 1997. And the reason that this stuff sounds so advanced is because the industry went in a less sophisticated direction. Again, not a criticism. That was the right thing to do. People have sold literally billions of dollars of games that are based on the pseudo railroad. It's not actually a rail shooter. A true rail shooter would be something like the original Rebel Assault, where you're literally on a rail and you can sort of swing back and forth a little bit. But from a design perspective, it's still the same function. It's still the same thing. In order to experience the story, in order to experience the gameplay, you have to go through in a general order, generally the same way. And you see that it was interesting to see how effective that was in the early Call of Duty games before Call of Duty turned into being primarily a multiplayer game. The original missions did a very good job of giving you a pseudo-military experience. But of course, it was complete bullshit. It was all scripted. It was heavily scripted. You had to do things in exactly the right order. You knew exactly what was coming at you eventually. In some ways, it was very similar to the old arcade games in that way. MMOs have opened things up. The FPS MMO, no one has really truly managed to design the proper one, the ultimate one. But there have been numerous attempts. Even Richard Garrett was unable to deliver on that idea. But the interesting thing to me about Fortnite, and the reason why I consider Fortnite to be essentially the game designers giving up, more or less, is because what we have been doing as FPS designers from the very beginning is attempted to provide meaning and structure and story and experience to the action. And unfortunately, we've been fighting the tendency of a certain group of players who I am not at all convinced are the majority of players, but there are a lot of them. And they have a tendency to simply run around like chickens with their heads cut off. If you've played any online game, starting back in the days of Doom and Heretic, when we were playing with four-player and 8-player network, what you would see is some people would play strategically, some people would camp, other people would team up and move cooperatively, but you always had the people who just run around like crazy, blasting away like crazy, and basically behaving in a way that you can't you can't even possibly consider anything that is remotely approaching anything credible or realistic. And so with Fortnite, and I have played it, and it's a very good example of what it is, the battle royale genre and so forth. But ultimately, there is no purpose. There is no story. There is no, the action is the experience. Now that's okay. That's fine if that's what you want. But you see, for years, designers have been trying to hide that. They've been trying to keep that under control. And what Fortnite represents, and it's obviously not the first battle royale game, it's not the only one, but it is the most successful one. It's the most symbolic of the concept. And so it's basically the designers throwing up their hands and saying, you know what? You guys just want to run around like chickens with your heads cut off, slaughtering each other. Here you go. And to their credit, they give you the means to do that. See, that's what's different between that and Call of Duty and Battlefield and all these other FPS games. Almost all the other games were trying to limit that. They're trying to limit it through the level designs. They're trying to limit it through the ammo drops and all that sort of thing. And so I think that, and again, I'm not criticizing Epic here. My old housemate is the audio director there. I've known Mark Ryan since 1995. These guys are massively successful, much more successful in the game industry than I've been so far. And so, who am I to criticize the path they've taken? They took the right path. They were very, very successful in doing so. But that doesn't change the fact that it is, from a design perspective, uh, several steps backward from where we were in some senses in 1998. And so I think that it's a reasonable perspective to have. You might disagree with it. You might you might claim somewhat nonsensically that this is some sort of boomer posting, since boomers can't post about this kind of stuff. If you're this into this deep into games, you're almost by definition post boomer. But and again, there's nothing wrong with these kind of games that you can just dive into, dive out. I mean, one of the genius aspects of Top 11, the massively successful mobile soccer management game, was the way in which you only had to play it actively play it for 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day tops. Worked out great. So, and there is, like all things, there is always an aspect to the game's success. In the case of Fortnite, like there has been to most games, it really suits the whole Twitch video replay thing very well. It's very well suited for that. How do you translate a game like Fantasy General? You can't do even a great turn-based game is not going to suit the Twitch crowd. You need a Twitch game. I mean, the whole reason that Twitch is called Twitch is because it's fundamentally designed around games that are more action, less story, more shallow, less deep. So, a couple questions here. What are your favorite games? Okay, well, it's pretty easy. My favorite game on the computer from my early youth is Akalabeth. I played that game for hours back when screen rendering was measured in, rather than frames per second, it was measured in seconds per frame. I still enjoy it. I still actually play it every now and then. I love the original Wizardry. I still play Fantasy General. I actually have Fantasy General working on my tablet. In fact, I have here, it's actually written, the strategy guide was actually written by my friend Terry Coleman from Computer Gaming World. He sent this to me years and years after I needed it. I think he sent it to me just like about 9 months ago. And the funny thing about this, little trivia for you, is that the last chapter or so is total bullshit. They weren't done with it yet when he had to get it written. And so he just wrote it up and they hope for the best. So, anyhow, other games I like, I have a Ms. Pac-Man machine that my wife gave me for my 30th birthday. I've never actually, no, that's not true. I've played one MOBA. I think MOBAs are moderately interesting. I don't really like the symmetrically balanced games as a general rule. I don't find them terribly interesting. I prefer when to have games that are a bit more asymmetrical. In terms of games that I appreciate now, or modern games, Top 11, that's a few years old, but that's still one of my favorite mobile games. In fact, the NCAA football game that I'm working on right now is conceptually based on that, you could say. Doom, obviously. Doom is one of the all-time great games. You learned networking with Doom, right? Exactly. We had no idea how to do networks or anything But once Doom came out and we realized that you could play with 4 players, because we played with 2 with the serial ports, but once we realized you could play with 4 players, we went out to the computer store. We bought 4 Novell network cards, taught ourselves networking. I think we finally got it going at about 3 in the morning. We stayed up all night playing Network Doom. we all called in sick to work the next day. The only game that I remember going to that extreme with was the original Madden '92. Might have actually been, it's either Madden '92 or Madden '93, but I think it was Madden '92 on the Sega Genesis. That one we actually bought. We went to the game store and actually bought a Sega Genesis just because we liked the game so much. We had to get the machine to play it on. So I did not design any custom levels for Doom, but we did do the music for Marathon and the second Marathon game for Bungie. We also did the music for Cyclones, which was an SSI Doom clone, and we came this close to doing the music for Heretic, but unfortunately we were going to either get Heretic or Cyclones, and they assigned us Cyclones, which was kind of a disappointment, to be honest with you. Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun when we started our game company, because I was probably 24, and I was the oldest guy in the company, and so we basically just lived there and worked and played Heretic nonstop. So, is gaming conditioning more powerful than TV conditioning? No, I don't think so, because it is potentially more powerful because the experience is deeper, but the ability to manipulate the emotions is significantly lower. John Romero's been trying to figure out how to create an emotion besides fear, and no one's really been able to do that effectively. So I would say that I respect Dark Souls more than I like it. I just never really got into playing it. The older I get, the more inclined I am to play more turn-based strategy. My reflexes just are not what they were. I can still play respectably. It's not like I'm going out there getting wasted constantly, but I'm just not particularly good at the Twitch games anymore. Which I used to be very good at them because, of course, I was an NCAA sprinter, so I had good reflexes. But with age, your ability to play the Twitch stuff declines, which is why some of the stuff that I plan to start working on in the relatively near future, if some deals go through, is I'm going to be working on some of these concepts going in the exact opposite direction from Fortnite. So, because now we've actually got the working artificial intelligence to realize some of the stuff that I designed in the past. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing. I know you play ASL. Any Euro board games you're interested in? No, I have Gloomhaven, and that's not a Euro board game, but I'm not really interested in the Euros. So, I have played Natural Selection. We played all the mods back in the day, starting with the original Team Fortress and so forth. Are video games bad for the West? Because it takes people away, because it takes young men away from TV, no, I would say they're good for it. Design a turn-based strat game based on 4th Gen warfare right now. I've actually talked to Mark Van Creveld about that concept. The thing about 4GW is that it's very, very difficult to design games for that. You know, I mean, even dating back to the 70s and Avalon Hill, they had games like, what was that? I want to say Contra, but it's not actually Contra. But you know, it's basically like a revolution in the South American country. And those type of games are a little bit conceptually difficult to do. You know, a number of people tried to do it. Total War Alt Hero. You know, I love the original Total War, and I even liked Total Warfare 2. I like Total War Shogun, Total War Medieval, and starting with Total War Medieval 2, I really began to dislike it because they really dumbed down the tactical aspects, and I hated Total War Rome. You know, I'm kind of disappointed in myself because, you know, Total War Warhammer was about like the ultimate game as far as I would have been concerned. And then they finally did it, and by that time I just hated the Total War engine so much that I didn't even bother playing it. So maybe I missed out. I don't know. Do you think games like Agony are just people trying to be edgy, or is it actually a game made by Satanists? I have absolutely no idea. None at all. It's not so much that I get looser talking about games. It's just that you know, this is my area. You know, this is something I'm accustomed to talking about. You may not be aware, but I've done four series of teaching game design and game development, and 2 of them online, 2 of them live at university, and it's something I'm accustomed to. You know, we do these 12 sessions of 3 hours covering game history, game concepts, game theory, all that kind of stuff. I don't have the time to do that now, but it was an enjoyable experience, and some of the guys who've taken the sessions have gone on and actually professionally developed games. So I'm pretty happy about that. Are your dev teams using Unity, Unreal Engine, or something else? These days, mostly Unity. Well, for one of the designs that we have in mind, we will probably use Unreal. And then I may be doing some stuff with a proprietary engine at some point in time. So I'm playing Warhammer 2. You're missing out. Haha. Hey, you know, I actually played. Do you remember the Warhammer MMO? I actually played that for a while. That was not bad. The problem is that they didn't realize that all the achievements and all the stuff that they innovated, WoW managed to copy it in about a month. Vox, can you play any Italian card games like Scopa or Briscola? Yeah, in fact, we play Scopa, I wouldn't say all the time, but we play it regularly with the family. Part of what kept me reading your blog were the gaming posts. I'm actually planning to get more posts up on DevGame. There's a post recently about the Alt Hero RPG, and I'd like to see a lot more of that. Are you a fan of Deus Ex? Yes. I'm generally a fan of Warren Spector in general. I've never played Darkest Dungeon. I played the first 2 XCOMs. I've never played the Metal Gear series, never really had any interest in it. StarCraft is the best game. I've never liked StarCraft. I played Warcraft, I played Warcraft 2. We actually designed a game similar to StarCraft, and I was actually asked by Blizzard to write the StarCraft novels, but I turned it down. Has Blizzard had a single original idea ever? Not really. That's not what they do. You know, what Blizzard does is they do what is relatively obvious, and they do it very, very well. You know, that's their thing. They they develop well. They don't really focus on design so much as they focus on development. And so, any fighting games? Oh, I've played a few. I had a design for a game called Dojo. It's a really great design, and Sega of Japan, or not Sega, Konami actually approved it. Konami of Japan had actually approved it for an American design, which never happened. But unfortunately, they closed the Redwood City office, and all the people quit, and then that just sort of did it in. I've played Diablo 2. They were fun games at the time. I'm very interested in procedurally generated stuff. Is Naughty Dog as converged as they seem to be? Probably. A lot more game companies are getting converged because less and less innovation is taking place. And so, there's entry points for the kind of people who think that they're innovating by making sure that there's an appropriate quota of black, yellow, red, and green people. So, anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this tonight. Just to do the nightly advertising. This is the new book we have out from John C. Wright, Superluminary. It contains all 3 of the ebooks: the Lords of Creation, the Space Vampires, and the World Armada. And talking about games, this would be the ultimate space game. Nobody has ever envisioned crazy stuff like in this book. All I can say is 2 words: War Dyson. If War Dyson does not at least pique your interest, you probably don't understand what I just said. But if you like big time space opera, if you like mind-blowing space opera, and if you like really, really freaking scary space opera, you really should check out Superluminary. So, anyhow, thanks for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed the inaugural Devstream. And if you did, please let me know, and we'll see what kind of views this gets compared to the regular dark streams and so on. As long as there's a reasonable amount of interest in talking about game design and game development, I'm more than happy to do it. So, and we can go a lot deeper into things this way than we might be able to otherwise. So, have a good evening, and we'll see you next time.